and sewer utility fees before the end of the year. That requires 2 meetings because they're set by bylaw. So if council moves the recommendations that I'm providing tonight with regards to water and sewer user fees, I'll bring those back, those bylaws back for first readings on November 28th, next Monday, and then back for consideration of adoption on December 5th. And the rest of the stuff in here on discussing property tax, inflationary increases, flat tax, parcel tax, all of that stuff, it really is just a bit of an education piece for council. We will be discussing more about that in the new year, discussing it in more detail. So when we get to the point where we've gone through the business of the water and sewer utility fees, I'm going to ask council whether you'd like me to continue flipping through the slides, or if you prefer, if there's any questions that you have as you were going through the presentation prior to the meeting here, I can just jump to those. Or alternatively, I could just ask that you take this information home as a bit of homework and read through it and just make note of any questions, because as I indicated, we're going to be revisiting this in the new year. So there's no use spending a whole lot of time on it tonight unless you have some specific questions. So I'll check back in with you after we go through the utility fees.
Awesome.
All right. Are you going to put the presentation up, or my face going to be on the screen all night here? No.
Yes.
Everybody's got it in front of them, so I'll just jump into it here. So with regards to the first slide there, topics of discussion. So we'll just talk about revenue sources. First of all, a municipality is limited to how we can raise revenue, the revenue sources that we have. Again, we're going to talk about water, sewer utility fees, garbage fees, and then there's also information on property tax, flat tax, municipal tax collection adjustment or the inflationary factor, parcel tax, and then the aquatic center, and then a proposed parcel tax for the wastewater treatment plant. Thanks, Maurice. Yep. Yes, just with regards to revenue sources, again, the community charter limits how we can, or dictates how we can raise revenue. So the various sources are listed there. Property taxes is the city's largest and most consistent form of revenue from year to year. What's not included in that list is flat tax. And there's a slide later on about that as well. Flat tax it's not included in the community charter. We're allowed to collect flat tax under a municipal regulation because we're grandfathered under legislation that was introduced in 1990 and then subsequently removed. So after, I think it was in 1992 when they did away with that. So nobody else could collect the flat tax, but if you're collecting it between those 1990 and the time they repealed it, you can continue to do it. So that's a significant portion of the tax revenue that we collect as well. With regards to the 5-year financial plan, as the mayor indicated, it's something that we do every year. We're obligated through legislation to adopt a 5-year financial plan every year. So with the 2022 to 2026 financial plan that we're operating under right now, the years 2 through 5 of that plan have been approved by council. We revisit the first year or the second year of that every time we reconsider the 5-year financial plan, and really just tweak it, add an extra year onto it. The capital projects that are approved in those final 4 years, we revisit the unit costs, recalculate the cost for those projects. That's particularly important in years like this where we're experiencing such high inflation. So once we get into the capital budgets, you'll see why it's important that we revisit those costs each year. But again, as Mr. Mayor indicated, we're not reinventing the wheel each time. We're really just tweaking the 5-year plan that was put into place or approved in the prior year. So with regards to revenue sources, I've just provided a table here. So this is the 2022 budget. So just to give a council an idea where we do get our money from. Again, property tax is our largest, most consistent form of revenue. So just over $10 million through variable rate tax. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. And then flat tax is the 1.3. Water, sewer, and garbage fees is a big chunk as well, $4.9 million. The bulk of that is water and sewer user fees. There's about $2.5 million collected through on water fees and another $2 million in sewer fees, and then the rest of that is the garbage. And then the other sources at the bottom that's what we had budgeted to collect in grants in 2022. Not all of those came through, but that's what that other category is primarily comprised of, is grants. So
Jim,
yeah.
just for clarification, so the grants are applied specifically to capital projects?
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, we
'Cause
do.
There's a number of these that are operating revenue, destined for operating revenues, but the grants are strictly for capital.
And not necessarily strictly. Like we get what's called for example, a small communities grant. It's unconditional. We take that into general revenues and we can use it to fund operations. That was $520,000 last year. But the big stuff, it's all capital. Like the grants that we apply for under programs, there really are no grants for operating expenses just because they're ongoing, and it's just not practical to provide grants for that type of expenditure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. So this slide here just talks about the way the finances of the city are segregated. So we essentially, I guess you could say we kind of run three businesses. So we've got a water fund and a sewer fund. Both of those are self-funded. So which means that the revenue that we collect through the utility user fees for water and sewer, that's what's used to pay for the operations of the water and the sewer. Those fees are also directed into reserves that are used to fund capital as well. So none of the money that we collect through property taxes or flat tax goes into these funds. They're self-funded utilities. Yeah, the money that's collected within them is used to fund the expenditures in those funds. And the general fund is everything else but water and sewer. And to set or to establish the revenues and expenditures for each of those funds, we adopt a 5-year financial plan. There's also a tax rates bylaw that's adopted later on in the year that has to be adopted by May 15th as well. That establishes the tax rates that end up pushing out the amount that we collect in taxes. So into the water and sewer utility fees. So the policy statement that we have in the current 5-year financial plan with regards to fees and charges is the city will promote funding of services on a user pay basis when feasible, and we will review the fees from time to time to ensure a reasonable recovery rate in relation to the demand for the service. So, and that applies not only to water and sewer user fees, but recreation facility user fees as well, arenas, pools, that type of thing. So with water and sewer, we primarily charge flat rates. We don't have water meters, so we can't charge based on what's actually used. So we just charge a flat rate based on the classification of a property. So whether it's a residential property or a hairdresser, restaurant, that type of thing, there's different rates for different types of properties. So in the current 5-year financial plan, we had budgeted 2% increases each year for 5 years in both the water and sewer user funds. And those were based on Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, sorry, can I jump back to the water thing just for a sec?
Yep.
Scott, if I could call on you to explain why we don't have water meters, residential water meters.
Here's the number of configurations that we'll be using. Here we go. Everyone hear me? All right, sorry about that. I didn't expect to be called on.
There's a few reasons for not having residential water meters. Number one, very difficult to install, particularly older neighborhoods like Town Site, um, where the water comes in at different points. We have a very cold climate, so you need to dig those water meters down very deep, or put them in people's homes. They're very expensive to implement, and they're not very popular. In my studies, I would say there's a very high turnover rate of elected officials following the implementation of water meters. So we do, yeah. I know it's always doom and gloom and threats and scaring and stuff like that, but we do have zonal meters, so we can measure how much water is going to various neighborhoods around town, primarily to monitor pressure. If there's a break in a certain neighborhood, the zonal meters will tell us. And we do actually have water meters on industrial users, so RCR and tech. We do sell bulk water, so. But 99% of the properties in town are on unmetered.
Thanks for that.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt there, Jim.
No, thanks for the question. So the 2% utility fees that were set for the sewer utility with the adoption of the 5-year financial plan last year was based on the amount of revenue that we needed to collect to fund the operating expenditures and planned capital projects over the 5-year period. When we were going through the exercise, or engineering department was going through the exercise this year of updating the budgets for the projects that we had in the 5-year plan, based on current unit costs, the projects were increasing in cost anywhere from 30 to 70%. Unbelievable increases this past year. It averaged out to about a 51.5% increase. So the projects that had been approved last year for construction in the final 4 years of that plan, 2023 through 2026, the inflationary increases on those projects was just about $1.5 million. We also had a study prepared by our consulting engineers in 2022 that provided a list of recommendations on projects that needed to be completed at the current wastewater treatment plant, the pollution control center, in order to keep that facility operating until we get the new wastewater treatment plant built. One of those projects was replacement of the bar screen. Not entirely sure what that is. Nick may be able to answer if you're interested, but there was a number of projects listed in that report. This one was listed as urgent for recommended implementation in 2023 at a cost of $281,000. The other recommendations that were further on in the plan, we've actually pulled them out, placed an asterisk beside them. And if the grant funding for the new plant doesn't get approved and that project gets pushed off into the future a bit, then those projects will have to get pulled back in, because we'll have to, again, make sure that that facility keeps running. Jason?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. This is, I guess, for Nick. So Nick, this one in particular, this bar screen, I have no idea what that device does, but I assume that that's pretty much a sunk cost, right? Until, like, if we replace the treatment plant, there's no, reusing or anything like that. It's done and one and done.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McBain. That's correct. This bar screen will be specific to the existing treatment plant. Wouldn't be able to get reused. The bar screen is, just for information, part of the primary treatment. It's the very first thing that raw sewage hits, and it filters out all the large debris and everything. So the current one we have in place is several years past its useful life. We're in a bit of a higher risk situation should that thing fail. The technology that's used on it is no longer serviced or manufactured, so it's in need of replacement.
So a couple of questions then, Nick. First of all, should it fail tomorrow, what's the turnaround for getting a replacement in?
I don't have the lead time off the top of my head. We would have workarounds that we could do in the interim, but we would be looking to get that replaced in short order. Depending on how that market looks right now for lead times, it could be anywhere from 3 to 6 months probably.
And I guess second was a comment, and that is that the balancing act here, of course, is fines that we're subject to, from the ministry, should we end up being offside for, well, just offside, I guess. I'm not even sure if it's for a period of time. So, yeah, we're doing a bit of a dance. Now, that new plant, based on where we're at today, is not going to be operational until, what, 2026? So I mean, we're talking 4 years out. So I don't know, that's telling me that we've got to take a serious look at replacing that, and not waiting till it breaks. Anyway, just comment.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's absolutely correct. We are at risk of fines should this thing fail for discharge outside of our permit values. And that's correct. Yeah, we have several years left to get this plant to the finish line. So there's some things that we need to do in the interim to keep it going.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I have another question for Nick. So if it does break down, do we have an emergency backup plan?
Yeah, essentially we would be running it manually for the interim until we're able to get a new system into place. Yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
So between the inflationary increases of the 1.48 million and this $281,000 component that we need to put into the pollution control center, that essentially added about $1.8 million to the final 4 years of the current 5-year financial plan. So we try to maintain a fairly healthy balance in our reserves in just to deal with things like this. Previous 5-year financial plan, we had budgeted about a $1.9 million reserve balance between the reserves that we have for sewer. So with these two hits, that essentially brings our reserves down to almost zero. A few of them down to negative actually by 2026 with the 2% increases that we had previously forecast. So in order to complete those capital projects that were approved in the 5-year financial plan last year for those 4 years, plus this, the bar screen, we're having to increase the user fees by 5% a year, bump them up from 2% to 5%, which will put enough money back into the reserves that we can get these projects done and set us in a position by the end of 2026 where we can continue with our infrastructure program.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, no, I just think I think this is a prudent move. We've already got discussion on the trash rack getting replaced, or bar screen, I guess is what we're calling it. But this is just one thing. I mean, we've got an aging facility. There's going to be some lag time. So I just think that this is a prudent decision, given that could be other things down the road, given the fact that this thing's aging, and we want to be a little bit more prepared for that.
Go ahead, Woody.
I'm just curious what the CPI or the MPI is for this year, just to kind of compare that to the 5%.
Yeah, we don't know that yet. I mean, the speculation on the inflationary factor between October, or I guess November of last year, November of this year, I think it's around 7%, depending on which indices you're looking at. And our MPI has come very close to the CPI, for the years that we've been using it. So I anticipated it would be somewhere around there.
Sandra?
Jim, if you wouldn't mind, could you clarify CPI and MPI for those that may not know?
Yeah, so CPI is the consumer price index that's widely used. There's different indices. There's the core CPI, BC CPI, CPI less food, CPI less fuel. But what the municipality's been doing since 2016 is we've developed a municipal price index, which we went out before my time, but the finance department went out and actually found some indices that more closely represented, or they felt more closely represented the municipal business as opposed to just the CPI, which looks at a broader range of organizations. So, and that was recalculated. So we would calculate our own price index essentially instead of using a base CPI. It's questionable the utility of that, but that's the way we've been inflating our costs over the last 5 years here.
So I think it's important to note that although we're doing this for 5 years, it's really only next year that we're locking in. And that as we go into the budget in the fall or the fall after, if we see a relief on the amount of inflation that we're getting, it's going to show relief on the 1.4 million. And we have an opportunity to actually reduce this increase in those future years.
That's exactly correct. Yeah, we look at this every year. So there is some speculation. I think everybody's hoping that there's going to be a bit of a price correction coming down the road. So if that happens, everything will change and it'll work its way back into the fee structure here. We'll be able to adjust it. So on the next slide here, it shows what the rates would be with the proposed 5-year increases. So 5-year increase to the sewer utility fees from 2022 to 2023 would mean an increase of $20.90 per year. And this does forecast out to 2027, but in all likelihood, those will change as we continue to move through the future plans here. So the direction I'm seeking from council tonight is I'm recommending that a resolution be passed that increases the rates detailed in the current sewer user fee bylaw by 5%.
Councillor McBain moves. Councillor Royer seconds. Further discussion? Go ahead, Sandra.
I'd just like to note that for $20.90 next year per person, I'm quite willing to pay that as a homeowner in case we have a breakdown. And I don't know whether everybody's going to question it or not, but it's a small price to pay for avoiding the inconvenience.
Yeah, we bill utilities quarterly, so it's $5 every 3 months in addition that is going to be paid. So
Go ahead, Woody.
Yeah, just looking ahead in this report, we're not planning on increasing the water fund. Is that correct?
that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so based on that, I feel fairly comfortable with this increase, especially with the inflation rates we've been seeing.
Yeah. Appreciate the comment. We'll get into that. But yeah, water fees are remaining the same as our garbage fees. So this is really the only utility fee increase here. The water, the bulk rate, we're looking at an increase. But
Further comment or question, council? Go ahead, Kevin. Here.
yes. Yeah, across all classifications, residential or otherwise. Yeah.
All right, we'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, thank you, council. So on to the water utility fees now. Similar to sewer, again, there were significant inflationary increases that were realized, not quite as bad as the sewer. The final 4 years of the plan, the capital projects experienced inflationary increases of about $1.15 million or 21.8%. There was a bit of an offset to that as well. There was a cast iron pipe replacement, the 800 block of 8th Avenue, I believe it was. That project, the construction of it was moved out of the 5-year plan. So that was a $489,000 project that we had budgeted in 2022 for design and subsequent construction, which is being moved. So that's working to offset those inflationary increases. Because of that, with the 2% increases that we had built into the plan previously, we did have sufficient reserves to complete the capital plan and pay for the operating expenses as budgeted. So no increase needed beyond the 2% here. So the 2% increase for the water works out to about $9.73. And yeah, if you add that to the sewer, it comes out to $30.63 increase for the year between the 5 for the sewer, 2 for the water. So that's $7.66 per quarter, $2.55 a month.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Did the 8th Avenue project disappear, or is it rebooked down the road, or?
Yeah, it's rebooked down the road. We're looking at potential 2028 construction, I believe, on that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's also important to think about as we move forward with deliberations that in 2017, I think, or 2016 and 17, when we did the asset management analysis, the infrastructure deficit that not only we, but municipalities across the country experienced were huge. Ours was, if I remember correctly, $73 million. These are just, big numbers. And the way you dig that hole is to not make decisions that need to be made at the time the infrastructure needs to be replaced. If you defer, the hole gets deeper, deeper, deeper. And so we need to, and that's not to say that we default to always doing it, but that's really the background that we have to, consider, as we're going through this. We've made really, really good headway on our infrastructure deficit over the last 5 years. I'm not sure we've quantified that yet exactly, but we are in a way better position today than what we were 5 years ago.
Yeah, and we haven't quite completed it yet, but we are undertaking an update to that asset management investment plan that defines the infrastructure backlog. So that'll be coming forward to council over the next few months here.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, you're welcome. So the other piece of the water utility fees, we do have bulk water rates in addition to the flat utility fees that are charged on residential properties, car washes, and restaurants. So the current bylaw establishes that at $2.20 per 1,000 gallons of water. The primary users of bulk water are RCR, the Ski Hill for snowmaking, Trickle Creek Golf Course for irrigation, and Tech is also a user as well. And there are rare occasions when we provide bulk water to Bootleg Gap Golf Course as well. So that bulk water is metered. So we, based on actual usage, we send out bills based on this rate a couple of times a year. And I just note here, as first highlighted during deliberation of the 2018 to 2022 5-year financial plan, the water rate set for bulk users had remained unchanged at $1.18 per 1,000 gallons for 14 years, from 2004 to 2017. And that's, of course, updating that rate is up to council. So the council of the day, for whatever reason, made a decision to leave those rates and not increase them over time. The rates for all the other classes, or all the flat rates, did continue to increase. So they increased by just about 42% over that time period, while the bulk water rate remained the same, which created an inequity there. What the engineers came up with is that the bulk water rate, those users are paying about 29% of what it costs for the city to provide that water, which at that time was calculated at $4.07 per 1,000 gallons. So since that time, it was obviously, it would have been unfair to all of a sudden hit those bulk water users with an increase like that. So over time, since 2018, council's been increasing that rate incrementally over time. So we had a 20% increase in 2018, 10 in 2019, then a 10, 20, and another 10% increase last year. So that increases that rate to using those previous values to about 56% of what it costs the city to provide the water. So, all the other users, residential and business, are essentially subsidizing the bulk users. So it's important that over time we get up to the point where they're paying the same amount for water that everybody else is. So I've done a bit of an analysis here, and so further 10% increases to the rate would move it to a level where the resulting revenue is sufficient to fund the cost of the water by approximately 2028. If we did 20% increases, we would achieve that by 2025. That table at the bottom there just provides an example of what those increases would be. So based on the actual metered usage in 2020, RCR used 26 million gallons of water, Tech 2.5 million gallons. So based on those numbers, so the 2023 invoice at the current rates, that's the billings that there would be. So $60,000 to RCR and $5,800, $5,900 for Tech. And then with the 10% increases, it would increase it by 10%. So by $6,000 for RCR, $590 for Tech, and double that if we go with a 20% increase. Jason?
Yeah, I'm just going to opine here. I normally, I think, would probably lean towards the quicker movement to get us whole, but I do want us to be mindful of the fact that RCR had a pretty huge hit to them last year, losing, essentially losing the lift and losing a better part of a season. I'm still in favor of the 10%. I think we need to work our way up to whole. I think, Jim, you hit it right on the head. This is great analysis that there is some major inequities here. But given the fact that that major incident happened last year, I think, can take that into consideration.
Thanks for your comments, Jason. The important thing is that over time we get there. So.
Yeah, I would like to echo the 14 years that there was no increase. That represents 4 councils. So 4 councils went through over the course of their term and chose not to increase these rates for whatever bizarre reason. Go ahead, Scott. You have the reason?
The reason was staff never brought the rates to council, and it's quite an expectation to expect council to remember that each year, especially with turnover and things like that. So I don't think council should wear that.
Okay. We're going through a pretty detailed analysis right now, and this will be for posterity for 14 years from now. And so I expect that we're going to be wearing the decisions that we're making today.
So for posterity, council should remember each year, should staff not bring it forward.
Is an important year. So fair enough. I appreciate that. I think the bottom line is that over that 14 years, this wasn't that either Tech or RCR or any of the other commercial users were bending somebody's arm or whining or saying, don't take the increases. And I really, fundamentally, we have to catch up. And I think both Tech and RCR would agree we have to catch up, but it's the pace at which we're doing that. And we're experiencing as consumers today, inflation rates that are approaching 10%. Businesses, they hurt the same way that consumers do. And in fact, what happens in the case of RCR, and this is only one example of an expenditure for them, it shows up in the rates for the lift tickets and also in the number of staff that they have available to hire every year. It's all part of their budget. And I think we need to be mindful of that as well. 10% is a pretty big hike, and I'm certainly in favor of the 10%. But the 20% seems a little bit usurious to me. Anyway, that would be only my opinion. Does anybody else want to comment? Stephen?
I have to agree with Jason with everything he said earlier. They took a big hit last year, and I'm against the 20%.
Okay, thank you. Sandra, go ahead.
Well, I've always felt that we needed to catch up faster. I appreciate what your point of view this year, but this, by the same token, I'm a retired person on a fixed income, and I'm hit by inflation just as well. But I just voted to pay 5% for sewage. Like we're all hit in some way. not just the bulk water users.
Yeah,
So-
fair enough. We're not waiving fees. We're restricting them to 10%, which is higher than what we just talked about increasing the sewage fees. So I think it's a relative thing. Part of the problem, pardon me, part of the problem with bigger companies like RCR is they're big and everybody, it's just bigger numbers. But the percentages are, pretty much the same. So anyway, it's what we feel comfortable with. Anything further? So was there a motion put forward?
Yeah, there's a couple here, Mr. Mayor. So the first one's just with regards to the 2% increase to the flat rate fees, as approved through last year's plan. We do need to update the bylaw so that there's a first recommended resolution there.
Okay, so Councillor McBain moves and Councillor Royer seconds. Further discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried.
And then and then the second one is just with regards to the bulk water. So 20% is penciled in there. If council's more comfortable with the 10% increase at this time, we'll just strike the 20, put 10 in its place and adopt that resolution with the 20%, 10% instead of 20, and instead of 250, it would be 250 instead of 272. Yeah.
I'll
So
sec-
moved as amended.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor, pardon me, Roberts. Further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks for that, Jim,
Yeah.
and Council for the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, council. So last
This-
part of,
This one in particular just really annoys me because it's a hole that was dug at a previous time that we're having to, dig our way out of. And I appreciate council's deliberation on that.
So the next section, final section on utility fees here has to do with solid waste collection, which is currently comprised of two components: garbage collection and recycling, soon to be three, with the introduction of composting in 2023. So the first bit we'll talk about here is the garbage collection. So when we implemented the automated truck, we were actually able to reduce the fees because of the efficiencies realized with that service. The operations department reviewed the actual expenditures and revenue for 2022, and the current user fee that we have of $58.32 a year, $14.58 a quarter, is sufficient to fund anticipated spending going forward. So they recommended that we leave that rate alone for 2023 and have another look at it towards the end of last year or next year. The next section is the solid waste collection is the curbside recycling fees. This was implemented in August of 2021. It's a contracted service, which is a little bit different than the garbage collection where we have our own trucks. So we've got a user fee of $276 a quarter that was put into place in 2022, 2021 to deal with that. And similar to the garbage collection operations is advising that we can leave that rate alone this year and be able to cover the costs.
Outstanding. The curbside recycling, Nick, has been a massive home run. I think everybody in the community would agree with that. It's just been a home run. Well done.
Yes, thank you very much. I would agree with those comments. I think it's been a great service for the community, and yeah, we look forward to the next one on the table here.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. I think the thing about the curbside recycling has been a big eye opener for people. I don't think they realized exactly how much money, how much stuff they could actually put in that giant bin. And now their bin is full and they don't even know how that happened.
It's true. Good
It's true.
comment, Councillor Roberts. Yeah. Very true.
So the next section here is on curbside organics collection. We don't have a fee set for that yet, and I'm not recommending that council adopt one by bylaw at this point in time. I've included a bit of a history on how this came about. It's obviously not in place yet. But it kind of started back in 2019 through discussions with the RDEK. Since that time, we've applied for grant funding to purchase a truck, purchase the carts. All the grants that we've applied for have been approved. So the truck was ordered earlier this year, I think in June. It's anticipated delivery next fall. The way things are going these days, it takes a long time for everything. So if everything goes according to plan as far as deliveries go, I believe operations is hoping that the service will be in place by the fall of next year. So once that kind of gets proved out, if it is going to be in fall, we'll be back in front of council in advance of that to establish a fee for that service.
Excellent, thank you. So I don't think I had mentioned this to you, Nick, but there was a director at the Regional District Board. There was some conversation around the facility that the Regional District is building, which is kind of where we'll take our stuff. And based on a whole bunch of background I won't get into, he said, let's kill it. This isn't going to work. It's going to be too costly. So, let's right here and now, let's stop it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. In any event, I explained that not only did we get, I don't know, a couple of $100,000 grant from the RDEK to buy the cans, but we've invested close to $750,000 in capital cost. And if they don't have their facility in place, we're going to be left high and dry. And so I don't think they had been thinking about it, but it ended the conversation. I think we're the only community that's going ahead, like we're ahead of the game with respect to that. But several other communities, I think, are intending to, to get on as well. But it's all contingent on them getting the facility in place. So it looks like we're back on track. Well, we didn't get off track, but we're staying the course, keeping people focused.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe I'll just add a quick comment to that. So the latest update from the RDEK is that they are still moving forward with the project. They are not immune to the inflation costs that we've all seen here. So they are having some struggles, from what I understand, in terms of budgeting for this, but trying to work through those. And they are trying to have this facility built by the fall in time for us to start the collections as well. And like Jim mentioned, we are on track for the carts and the truck. Both have been ordered. Hopefully be here kind of late summer. Be in line with the start of collection, hopefully in early fall.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Nick. Woody.
I was just curious where the facility is being planned to be built. Location.
Go ahead.
Central landfill.
Yeah, it's going to be at the Central Subregion landfill up by Fort Steele.
All right, thanks.
Okay. So the direction I'm seeking from council on this is the first resolution that I've got up on the screen there is to leave the solid waste fees where they're at for this year.
Who wants to have their name on that one? Woody. All right. Councillor McGuire moves and Councillor Karen seconds. Further discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried.
And the next one is same thing for the recycling fees, to leave them at the 2022 levels for now.
Another good one. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Karen seconds that one as well. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Yeah. You guys have earned your keep already.
Okay, thank you, council. But that's the business part of the meeting. So we've got all the resolutions that I was looking for from council.
Go ahead, Sandra. If you put your microphone on. Awesome.
Number one was that staff that council accept for information this report.
Receive the report. It's the whole report,
Oh,
so
we're not
we'll
done.
do that. at
I'm
the very
sorry,
end.
I presumed you were all done.
Yeah, no,
My mistake, sorry.
I might be. That depends on you guys. So we're at that point in the presentation where I'll throw it out to council. Really, we're going to be revisiting each of these topics again in the new year, where we can have additional discussion, and I'll be looking for direction from council. So I'm not sure if there'd be a lot of utility in going through each of these slides right now. I'm certainly happy to do that if council's interested. If not, if there are any specific questions on any of these topics or any of the slides, I can certainly try to answer those. So
Go ahead, Jason.
You know what I'm going to ask you, Jim. On the flat tax, what I want to know is there a way that we can get a little bit more analysis based on who we know is a homeowner and who is not for the individual bins that you had set up there, Jim? I think you had it like 0 to 100, 100 to 200.
yeah.
Is there a way that we can glean that data to better understand where the bulk of our home ownership is within those bins?
Yeah, I mean, we can do an analysis. I'm not sure, I think it'd be onerous to go back and look at to make a determination whether those properties are rented out or people live in them, but we could certainly, for that $200,000 level, for example, we could undertake an analysis where we could make a determination of where those properties are. Like I suspect that most of those, maybe all of them now are, the fractional ownership stuff or the smaller condos up on the hill that are, we can presume that those are mostly owned by folks from out of town and rented.
Right.
That type of thing. But yeah, if that's something council's interested in, I can, the next time we talk about this, I can prepare some slides on that.
Yeah, further.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the more data that we can have, when we've made these decisions in the past, I think we've kind of somewhat relied on a little bid of anecdotal, like what we think is going on in town, which, maybe or maybe not accurate, but I think I just like a little bit more analysis, and I don't want this to be a science project, but the more data that you can give us to help us kind of direct where we can get the most bang for our buck with impacting the least amount of homeowners, within given ranges would be really helpful.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can certainly do that. And I mean, it'd be an interesting analysis to undertake, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it would have been a lot different. Like there were a lot of single family homes in that $200,000, $300,000 range, but I suspect that's, it's taken it, or we know it's taken a change.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Go ahead.
I'm looking at the Aquatic Center parcel tax, page 54, and 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph. It says that the pool will finally be paid off 2025, and you're saying that it might be reduced to approximately $40
by $40.
by $40. So how do you base that on? Because I'm still a little bit learning about this. So
Yeah.
you might elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so the revenue that's collected through parcel tax, it's used for two things essentially. One is to fund the operating deficit for the pool, so expenditures over revenues, and the other thing is to fund the debt payments associated with the construction of the aquatic center. So that 2025 is the date that debt expires or is repaid. We pay about $125,000 a year. So based on the number of properties, it makes up about $40 of that, of the parcel tax that's collected. So I think we collected $209. I think it was $209 per property last year. So $40 of that related to the debt. So once the debt's gone, it'll be council's decision whether they want to drop that off. They could continue to collect it and direct it to a reserve for the aquatic center or something like that. But that would certainly be an option at that time.
Great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We've also talked about the option of directing it towards a reduction in the future parcel tax for the wastewater treatment plant as well. So we'll have options to consider. Yeah, with respect to, I didn't think it was in here, but just for council's edification, rough numbers. Jim talked about, revenues, less expenditures and the parcel tax covering that. So it's, it's roughly $1 million a year to operate the pool. And I think we get about 300,000 in revenue. So that parcel tax is based on about a $700,000 subsidy annually. This is typical of every aquatic center in anything but the largest of communities where you get large volumes of people coming through. And what we've discovered, I think, or what I've discovered in talking with a lot of the other communities and, folks that visit here or are moving here, is that an aquatic center is one of those facilities that sets your town apart from other small towns. And in fact, moves it out of the small category into, the desirable category where, people want to live there. So, I know a lot of people when they hear or see what that differential is, get a little bit fussed about it. But at the end of the day, it's a really small price to pay for the amenities that we're providing our residents, here in Kimberley. Go ahead, Councillor Roberts, then
And
Councillor Roy.
Mr. Mayor, we recently recently within the last year and a half, went through quite an intensive look at the fees at the aquatic center to see what we could do to enhance some of that income. And there was a bit of adjusting done at that time to materialize as much as we could, humbly do so, to make sure that we gathered whatever we could from the payments that were being made to the pool.
Go ahead, Stephen.
So I have a general question about the sewage treatment, the new facility. It sounds like we're going to be using a lot of water. Will there be a meter installed for that one?
So with the new facility, it's actually going to be using effluent water within the plant. So it's not using straight potable water. So it's recycling the effluent from the end of the plant and using it for processes inside the plant. So it actually won't be, very minimal use of potable water.
The circular economy at work.
Correct.
Awesome. Further?
Yeah. I have one more question too. Have we ever considered putting a meter in each regional sections of the city so we can monitor how much water we use? Like, do we have an actual figure that we can actually monitor in each region of the city? I'm talking like town side, you put a meter at the bottom and then you put have we ever thought or considered? Because I think, analysis and numbers should give us a bigger picture of how much water we're using. Any thought on that?
Yeah, so we actually do have some regional meters measuring the different pressure zones. It's not for every zone right now, but we do have a number of flow meters throughout the system, mainly used to monitor for potential leaks and stuff like that. So we do have some of that data currently. Yeah.
It's available online or we just ask for it?
We don't publish the individual areas currently, but yeah, I'm sure we could put together a report for that.
Okay. Thanks, Nick.
You betcha.
Further, council, on anything contained in the report?
Great job, Jim. Very good report.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So proposed next steps.
Yeah. Thank you, Council. And if there are, as you continue to revisit this report, I'm sure you'll be looking back to it every couple of days. If anything does come up that you have questions about, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer questions for you. So next steps will be the bylaws that Council approved amendment to tonight. I'll be bringing those forward for consideration of first readings, water and sewer rates on the 28th of November, back for adoption on December 5th. And then the first presentation of the capital budget to Council, we'd initially talked about doing that at the December 5th special meeting. Council is going to have a presentation that night that is going to take up a bunch of time. So we didn't think it's just not practical to have that at the same meeting. So We may have a special meeting on the 7th. That's tentative at this point in time. And then in the new year, we'll jump back into the discussions on the level of taxation and continue on with the capital plan. Everything has to be finished. Bylaws have to be adopted on or before May 15th, along with the financial statements. So financial plan bylaw, tax rates bylaw, flat tax bylaw, aquatic center parcel tax bylaw. Those will all be brought back before council, probably for first 3 readings in late April, and then back for consideration of adoption the first meeting in May. But as we continue to move forward through the budget process, we'll give council as much advanced notice of the meeting dates and the agendas as we can. We also keep a web page. Pam in Communications has been great about putting that information together and making it available for the public. So, you know, soon this presentation will be up on that site. People will be able to click in and get this information as well.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you, Jim. I just wanted to share that prior to Jim being our treasurer, we didn't ever talk about budgets till sometime in late January into February, and then it was a mess, and it was complex, and it was on top of it itself, and it was all. And the new councillors and I, we would look at each other and say, "What was that?" You know. And so when Jim came in and initiated, along with Scott, the opportunity to start working on these things much earlier, piece by piece, by logical piece, it all kind of comes together in an understandable fashion, and it's not just like tossed on your desk in a mess. And so I really appreciate the manner in which they put these things together so that we can grasp it. And I hope that you all feel that way after all is said and done too.
Yeah, I really appreciate those comments, Sandra. And this presentation normally in a non-election year would be in front of council. Last year, I think it was October 4th that we had presented this. So it would be a lot further ahead, but you know, for obvious reasons in an election year, it's unfortunately you guys are jumping in and we're having to throw this stuff on you. So it's a bit of a contracted process this time around. Yeah, not yet.
Okay, last call for comments. Hearing none, could I have a mover to adjourn? Councillor McBain? Oh, thank you, Maurice. I was just checking to see if you were watching. So going way back to the beginning of the meeting, the motion was to receive Jim's report. We'll now call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Move adjournment. Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Dunneback, seconds. All those in favor? Awesome. We're done. Well, guys, so we should probably just give Maurice 30 seconds to let us out, or your comments will be forever on YouTube.